you should have a second chance in life, so that when you went through prison, you should have the opportunity to have a flat or a house and then have a job and a new family and everything. I agree with all of that, but I disagree with that these people should have the opportunity to have a career in the spotlight of the world.
Welcome to a new episode of the Bleeding Metal podcast. This is a team episode where we're going to discuss some current events that are plaguing our mind, and also we will have some rants, and we will do our best to end the episode on a positive note. But as I have been saying more and more often lately, the world is on fire and we need to pay attention. It's going to be one of those where we get political, where we get a little more serious, and we invite you to be part of the conversation by commenting on the episode, on our social media, and trying to be aware of everything that is happening around us. I am Kiki, your co-host. My pronouns are she, her, and today I am here with my geographically a little more local co-host.
Hi, Martha here. My pronouns are also she, her.
And we are joined from all the way over the ocean.
Hi, I'm Suzana. My pronouns are also she, her. I think it was something that the four of us have been reading about, listening about, watching videos about, thinking about the whole situation with As I Lay Dying. I think everyone already knows this, but just a recap, the thing is the band is pretty much collapsing on its own. Every band member left, one after the other. It was actually curious that it wasn't a group thing, but apparently each individual decided to leave at a certain point, leaving the singer all on its own. And then also his other band, other members from that second band also started leaving. The whole conversation was that none of the guys leaving the band ever said anything really specific about why they are leaving, but the whole thing revolves around the fact that Tim Lambesis, the leader of As I Lay Dying, is not a great dude. So the other guys are all leaving the band and complaining that his behavior is not okay, that he doesn't treat people all right, and there are some hints that some of them were personally offended. The band had even South American tour planned. I did pick up a fight with a Brazilian company that was bringing them here. They blocked me on Instagram because I was complaining too much, apparently. 2 comments was too much for them. But they were supposed to come here next year, and I think also North America. So they had big plans. The band was apparently doing very well. And nope, they started melting and collapsing on its own. I don't know if the two of you are or were big fans of the band. I was talking to Martha before we started recording, and she has a story listening to the band before, of course, the whole thing happened. I was not. They were not really on my radar. But the reason why I was following this news closely and having big feelings about it is because, first of all, I don't think it's big news that a guy who tried to hire a hitman to kill his own wife turns out to be not a great dude. So I thought it was almost funny if it wasn't really sad that people decided to join him in a band and then left because he turns out to be not a great dude. Oh, really? You never noticed that before? Don't you think something happened before that would make you not have a good impression of him? But no, apparently they only noticed that later. And I also felt big feelings about all the comments that I read, whenever I would read again and again about a next guy leaving and then this other guy leaving, and now the tour is in jeopardy because we don't know if there's going to be anyone left. The more I got like little bits of news on this same subject, I got really sad about the comments online. Social media can be great for building community, but can also be just hell sometimes. The amount of men just going crazy or even making jokes. Oh, someone else is leaving. Who did he kill this time? So not funny. And also, I thought that was very weird that when a guy decides to leave the band, then that makes sense. But when a guy who tried to kill his own wife has a band and is touring the world, then nobody complains and it's great and it's awesome. The minute a guy complains about something related to his behavior, then everybody's like, yeah, of course, the guy is awful. But it's one of those things that just keep happening and keep having us ask ourselves, how much does the industry even care about women? The fans, how much do they really care about violence against women? And how far are we going to go still supporting men that are just not great at all? But I don't know if we are making that much progress. It doesn't feel that way. At least this week doesn't feel like we're doing a lot of progress. It's very frustrating that we are even here talking about this. So I guess I just wanted to hear from you too. What are the big feelings? Just get it out of your heart already.
Hey there, this is Pia. Unfortunately, I can't join our team episode today because I am sick. But I was reading in the news, I read stuff about people should have second chances and everything. And I agree with that you should have a second chance in life, so that when you went through prison, you should have the opportunity to have a flat or a house and a job and a new family and everything. I agree with all of that, but I disagree with that these people should have the opportunity to have a career in the spotlight of the world. Another example that I have is from the Olympics this year. There was an athlete from Denmark. He played beach volleyball. And when he was, I think, 19, he traveled to the UK and met a 12-year-old girl, and he raped her 3 times. He also went to prison for that, and he said that it was the worst mistake in his life. I think that a person like this doesn't fulfill the Olympic spirit and the Olympic values and shouldn't have the opportunity to win a medal in the Olympics and to participate there. He can, of course, do this sport. Maybe he should not train a children's team. I'm totally fine with him living a normal life, but we also have to look at the survivors here, because they were not the ones who made the mistakes. So their interests should weigh much more than the interests of someone who raped a child or someone who wanted to kill his wife. It should be more important that the survivors are safe and they don't have to see their aggressors on screen.
Yeah, big feelings. I used to be a huge As I Lay Dying fan. I don't know, my introduction into metalcore, As I Lay Dying, were a very big part. I learned that a decent metalcore bands needs 4 words in their band name, and that you need clean vocals from someone who plays an instrument with strings. So all these important things. And I just realized that my fan level was that high that I was commenting a lot of what Suzana was saying with As I Lay Dying album titles and song titles. In the introduction, I was like, yeah, there's an ocean between us, Suzana. And the whole situation, like frail words collapsed. That's what's going on in my head. I used to really dig this stuff, and I was so sad and angry when everything happened. So I stopped listening to their music when the first stuff about the hitman and the wife and everything came out. And I never continued to listen to their music. So there was this other band, the other band members had, I think it was called Woven War or something. It wasn't as heavy, but I did enjoy it. And also because I really enjoyed their guitars, especially Nick Hippa. He's a great guitarist, and also I dig their clean vocals, and I'm so happy Josh Gilbert is doing awesome things with Spirit Box. I would love to have some Josh Gilbert vocals on some Spirit Box songs in the future. So
He does them live. They're amazing.
he does. I never saw Spirit Box live. I always miss them. So I'm so waiting for that. So at some point they came back. And I was like, okay, so this man was sentenced by a system and then he went to prison and then he came back. I think it was also good marketing saying that he repents for his sins and everything. And he's a better person now and he's working with other prisoners to make them better people and to adjust coming back from prison and everything. So I was like, okay, so the man did a very bad thing. And then he learned that it was a very bad thing and he's coming back to society and trying to do something better. If you do something very bad in your life and you can never come back from that, no matter how hard you work, maybe there's something good coming out of this and he being a role model for other people. So it had a positive note for me, but turns out he's just a shit person who did a shit thing, who never really changed. I don't know this guy personally, so I can only say what I see and hear. But yeah, maybe he was a bad person all the time and it was just like a big marketing effort to pretend that he's a good person now and we all fell for it. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those cases where beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Maybe it was you, Martha. You had this idea that a person that did something wrong would learn from their mistakes and so on. But apparently it was not the case for him. Maybe you're being too generous, which is a good thing, but maybe not reality for him anyway. What about you, Kiki? Where is your heart with all of this?
I was never a fan of As I Lay Dying. I come from a very different section of metal subgenres. So I was never really confronted with it before the scandal about him going to prison and the trial and all of that stuff. The name As I Lay Dying has, because of that, for me, always been stained with blood of this attempted murder situation. For that reason, I did not have to mourn the loss of As I Lay Dying as I have mourned the loss of other fandoms for myself. And the thing that you are now both talking about, I think, are two very big concepts in our society nowadays: cancel culture and separating the art from the artist. We had a big episode of the podcast talking about separating the art from the artist. And Pia and I made our personal positions very clear. I said that I can't really do that. Whenever I consume something, especially music or literature, and especially when I'm very dedicated to it, if it's my favorite band or my favorite book, whatever, I do want to know who the person is that is producing that. Because if I can relate to some of the lyrics, to some of the writing, then I want to see if they were actually going through similar situations. I actually develop a genuine interest about the person who is creating this. And that reminds me about another very good recent episode of the podcast where we talked to Simon from Defocus. And he said that every art, every type of art is political because of the politics of the person who's creating it. In the perspective of what we are living nowadays, we're recording this on November 21st, 2024. In light of the election in the US, there are different perspectives about, can we actually separate politics from our personalities? And I saw something that I shared on my story about, if your politics don't align with mine, we cannot be friends. And I don't think I would go that far. But where I agree with them is that our politics reflect our values as human beings. If I believe in freedom and equality and that humans should all be given the same chances and the same opportunities, and that is my core value, which means the politicians I vote for need to stand for that as well, which means if you vote for someone who is working against that, or if you listen to someone who tried to kill a woman, your politics and your values don't align with mine, and we have some conflict, right? So that's the whole chain of events that goes through my head when I see people wearing shirts of, I don't want to name these bands, but I have a list in front of my eyes, of bands that have committed sexualized violence against minors, who have attempted a murder against a woman, who have a lot of allegations against them about sexual abuse or domestic violence. We have several of those in the metal community. And when I see people wearing those shirts, I wonder, do they actually realize what they're doing, what they're signaling? Do they realize that by wearing that shirt, they are supporting a convicted or not convicted perpetrator of violence? And if they are conscious of that, is that because they actually believe that women do not deserve respect and freedom, and that they actually deserve to be the target of violence like that? I do actually think about that, and I will go into, if I have an interaction with a person that's wearing that kind of shirt at all, I will go into this conversation with that prejudice.
I think I would be even afraid, honestly, if I were
like
absolutely. Alone in a room with a guy wearing a As I Lay Dying t-shirt. I would be afraid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
It's not even prejudice. I would be nervous, for real.
Especially as women of color, yes. Especially as a queer woman of color. I am afraid for my safety. Even though we, as the metal community, say we are so welcoming and we are so tolerant and we are such a safe space and we take care of each other. Well then, how about you take care of fellow women metalheads by tossing those fucking shirts, taking these bands out of your playlists, and not giving them fucking record deals?
Yeah, even headline spots in festivals.
We're not only talking about As I Lay Dying anymore. We're talking about Pantera. Yep. We're talking about fucking Marilyn Manson getting a new deal at Nuclear Blast. Who the fuck approved that?
Yep. And also, all the bands that you listed and all the bands that you have in your head that you're not naming, their crimes or allegations, accusations, blah, 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 they are all violent crimes against women. It's not like a parking ticket or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's always the kind of crime and the kind of misbehavior that we trivialize is always crime against women. So is my life even valuable? It's really offensive in a personal level, really, because the thing with As I Lay Dying that I was talking earlier is that I thought it was ridiculous that the guys that were playing in a band with him, they left because they were mistreated or because they saw something that team did mm-hmm. that they didn't like, and that was their limit. That's where they draw the line. But when he was doing awful thing to women before, that was not their limit. Your life is more valuable than any woman's life. So I think that this coincidence that it's always violence against women is what gets trivialized, and that's really hurtful. I wanted to ask the two of you about this idea of separating art and the artist. Because yes, I do think it makes sense sometimes. And I remember the episode, Kiki, that you mentioned that you and Pia discussed where you draw the line and where is the limit and what is it that you can live with. And I do like the idea of people having a chance to fix their mistakes, atone for what they did. What Martha was saying, that if more people that did something wrong could have the opportunity to fix what they did, repent for their sins and live a better life, or try to be a role model of a person who made this mistake, but then I did this and that, I think that could be beneficial to everyone if that could be a path. I really don't believe in closing the door. I do understand that there has to be a path. I have this theory about separating art from artists, and I wanted to know your opinion about this, because I always find it baffling when people can do that. Let's say it was my favorite band, and I grew up listening to it, and then turns out the guy wanted to kill his wife, and I don't think that's great. But I feel like people sometimes get so attached with a band, and sometimes it feels like it's men banding together to defend each other. Oh, you can't treat a man badly because their fans are going to band together and defend this guy from injustice. But it's almost like they're defending themselves. Like, I grew up with a band that I love so very much, and it's so attached to who I am and my story, my life, that when years later it turns out the guy is not a good guy, I can't separate myself from the artist. So I feel the need to defend this guy with my last breath, because if I stop listening to whatever band, it's almost like I'm rejecting a part of who I am. And I don't know why we do that. Maybe there's a confusion there, and maybe that's why some people can't just side with the victim and they have to side with the band because they have to defend their idol till the last minute. Do you think that makes sense? Do you think that maybe there's a little bit of that in there as well?
Absolutely. I think it makes sense to the degree that we get attached to whatever we like. And music is something so emotional, and it can be so personal that the moment we see it threatened, we get very protective. And I think for a little bit, at least, we live in denial of, oh my gosh, if this piece of art touched me so much, how can it come from a bad person? And that has several other aspects to it, starting with not everything is black and white. Not everything is good or bad. We live in all of the gray scales and all of the spectrums in between. And we should just stop thinking in those categories. I was just listening to an episode of On Wednesdays We Were Black, the podcast. I very recommend it. The episode is called Does Cancel Culture Work? I was just listening to it today. I think it's one of their best work, and it's very well researched, and it talks about cancel culture is not something new. It's something that has been happening forever. The witch hunts of the Middle Ages, the stonings of even before that. And it's always, we as human beings tend to judge each other, and we want to be the person who is right. And coming back to what you were saying, Suzana, the moment something we liked or something we thought was right gets attacked, we either want to take distance, and I think to a certain degree that's what we're doing here. We're condemning that because that was bad, and so we're taking distance because we are the better humans. And the people who are defending it come out from the same principle and say, no, that's not possible. These survivors who are stepping up and making these allegations, they must be lying. They must be in it for the money. They must be just wanting some attention and their 15 minutes of fame, because I cannot be the bad person supporting someone. The person I support cannot be a bad person and cannot be an abuser. And so I think to a certain degree, we close our eyes in that sense. I will recommend another podcast that I also was listening to today. So everything adds up very well today. It's an episode of the Unladylike podcast, a feminist podcast. And the episode I listened to today was about men's rights activism. The researcher that was part of the episode that was being interviewed on the podcast said that through the studies that they made, the result was that men who are feminists and men who are men's rights activists have the same logical thinking. They go through the same process of analyzing themselves and the world to get to these completely opposite lines of thought or opposite causes for activism. A man realizes the world is unfair, there is oppression happening, and it's separated by gender. And so men's rights activists go, okay, and I have to see myself as the victim. And so it's feminism and it's women that are oppressing us. And they go all the way to the extreme with that one, while men who realize they are in the position of privilege in this oppression system, most of them become feminist men. Not in order to make the world a better place for everyone, but in order to be able to think of themselves as good people, as good humans. And so they don't even go further supporting women's causes and doing more political activism in order to make the world a more equitable place. They just stay in their comfort zone of, okay, I'm a feminist man, so I'm a good person. That was very interesting and very sad. But what you were saying before as well, I think is a very important fact. So going back to cancel culture being part of history, and also going back to us living in the gray scales and in the gray zones, I think coming back from being cancelled is also not as black and white, because there are things that you can come back from that you can realize and make amends for. And if you're genuine and want to learn and to be a better person, and you actually give evidence of that, I think it's much different than to just say, okay, Teen Lambesis did his sentence, he did his time, so now he can just come back and be part of our very welcoming metal scene again. I think that is maybe one side of the spectrum, and the other side of the spectrum would be, I don't know, a band like Architects, where one of their members, and that is something that I was very touched by, and where I was in that denial limbo in the beginning, because one of the members retweeted a very misogynistic post that was at the beginning of last year, or the beginning of this year? The beginning of this year. What is time even? And they were in the middle of their tour, and I was about to go to their concert, and then they didn't even really make a statement. The band member just deleted the tweet and apologized, saying something like his thumb slipped, and he didn't really mean it. The big statement the band apparently did was something Sam Carter said on stage, that everybody on this stage, none of us is sexist, none of us is homophobic, we all are tolerant and respectful and whatever. And that is just not specific enough for me, and it hurt. And it hurt my fandom of Architects. And I don't know, I listen to them less. It's so sad. And this relates to what we've been saying in the podcast for a while as well. Now that I try to be conscious and try to be aware of everything that happens around the world, and that I have causes that I fight for, I live in constant fear that one of my idols will turn out to be an asshole, and we will find out that they did something terrible, and we will not come back from that.
Yeah, I think there should be a database, especially for women, unfortunately. It happened to me just last week that I just discovered this older band that has been around for like 20 years. And they're awesome. I was listening to them, I was like, wow, they're very famous. I'm not going to name them, but they're awesome. I spent the whole day listening to it. I was like, oh, favorite band. And then I was reading about them, and yes, they were accused of crimes some years ago. And I was like, come on, there should be a database that I could just search. Is this band okay for me to listen to? Oh, no. Okay, skip, next. Or it happens a lot with older bands that even if you don't find anything wrong with them, or like a formal accusation or anything, you just never know, because they could have been the equivalent of tweeting silly stuff in the 80s that nobody cared about. And so it's not a formal accusation or anything, but if they were doing the same thing today, you would not like them as well. So I don't know, it's very hard for women to find out who we should listen to or not. Thinking of what you said, Kiki, that you put it very well, that we all want to be the good person. We all want to be the hero of our own stories, and we never want to think of ourselves as the bad guy. So it's very interesting, the research about men defending male rights and also men feminists and how they process the world almost the same and just choose different paths. Maybe one first step would be that we do attach ourselves to musicians and to artists. And of course, we take music seriously, and our values are connected to the kind of art that we consume every day. But I think it would make a difference that we are connected to the values of the music and not necessarily the person. Just a silly example, Stratovarius has been making music about the environment for 20 years now. And I do care about the environment, and they do as well, and that's great. Our values align. But if one of them turned out to be a horrible person, I could just denounce him and not feel like, oh, I supported the environment all these years and now I'm wrong as well. What you were saying, Martha, that you were a fan, then you're not a fan anymore, and then you're a fan again, then you're not a fan anymore. I don't think you were personally attached to the band and to the people in the band so much that you couldn't cut ties with, especially Teen Lambesis, the minute that he turned out to be a bad person, right? You were even talking about the other guys in the band, so you like the music more than you like the men. So I don't know, maybe one way we could incentivize people to cut ties with certain bands and certain names in the metal industry is to say, like, you're okay. It's okay that you listen to this band for 20 years and you have memories being a teenager, doing whatever, and then this band was playing and it was the first metal show that you went to with your friends, and maybe it was your dad's favorite band. It's okay, although the memories stay, and whatever good value that you attach to the memory still stays. You're still okay. You're still good. You're not... Because I feel like sometimes it's almost like you being canceled together with the band, or you defending the band to your last breath. And you don't have to do it. Let them go and you stay because you're awesome. You're the hero of your own story. And you get to be a good human being even if you liked a band that is not great. I don't know, be more specific about canceling violence against women and not everyone who listens to a band who happens to have this one dude. I think Martha said something interesting about liking the other members of the band, and maybe boycotting the whole band wouldn't be fair because this one guy is a criminal, the other guys we don't know about. So I don't know, if we could have more ways of canceling this and not that, and keeping your integrity and your sense of identity. It's the same thing you were saying, Kiki, about things not being black and white, right? So you're not being canceled in the process as well. You can be on the side of not supporting violence against women and still liking whatever band you want to like.
Especially where is the black, where is the white, where is the gray area? I'm trying to have actionable advice. What do you do when a band you really love does something that doesn't align also with your values already? But if you're the kind of person that can still listen to the music and still love the music, so if you're able to do this kind of separation, what would be important in that situation? What would be really important for me is that I wouldn't want to support the band still financially. I wouldn't go on a streaming service and still stream As I Lay Dying's music or buy new things. But I still have this huge MP3 music collection somewhere, and I do have all the As I Lay Dying albums. If I would feel like, oh my God, now we talked about it, maybe, I don't know, I want to relive a part of my childhood again, I don't know, then I will get my old hard drive and listen to the music where I have it, or if I had old CDs and if I had a place to play CDs anymore, maybe like I would do that. But for me, it's really important to not support with money. And I think most people don't realize that if they go on Spotify or all other streaming services and they still listen to that music, they give money to the person who did a shitty thing. If you can't separate yourself from the art because it means so much to you, then yeah, maybe this could be one actionable thing to do.
And that's a good one, because we can't really block certain bands for being booked, for touring the world, for headlining festivals, which is very frustrating. I think at least most platforms, streaming platforms, have options to block the artist. I do agree. I think it's the least, the tiny little bit that we can do for sure.
I think there are 3 things to end up on. The first one is, I think Martha was very right. Maybe we don't throw out the things that bring us memories from our childhood, back from when we didn't know these people were actually not great humans, but maybe not wear them in public. I think that was something also we said with Pia on the Separating Art from the Artist episode. Maybe we will still listen to those songs that are very meaningful and very special to us, very in private. We don't give these bands any more platform, and we don't recommend them to anyone else. That is number 1. We should be more aware of what we are doing with the things that we are wearing out in public. We should be aware of the political power that our money has. I think that is very important. As Martha was saying, when we stream songs on streaming platforms or when we buy concert tickets, we are actually financially supporting people and the things they can do with that money or with their lives. We are indirectly enabling that. So be conscious of what we're supporting, be conscious of what's happening in the world.
I read 2 news recently that really left me speechless. And one of the news is from Russia. Russia bans child-free propaganda to try to boost birth rate. And that means that in Russia, when you publish something that can be considered child-free positive, so encouraging people to not have kids or whatever that means, you have to pay something, you get financial restrictions. And the journalist in me asks, okay, where does this start? Where does this end? It's also limiting, of course, the freedom of the press, but it is very difficult for the women as well because they want to boost the birth rate and everything they do is making women responsible for that. The first question that I asked myself is why do they want to boost their birth rate? Is it really because they need people in general? Because with artificial intelligence on the go, I don't think that we need so many people anymore in the future to do the daily business. But what artificial intelligence can't do is being soldiers in war. And if a nation really struggles to raise the population, it really frightens me that Russia does this right now. So maybe that's another point of preparation for a bigger. And also they provided financial support and maybe also other support for the woman to make it more achievable to have kids. But the article also says that several women were asked and that they said that the future is so uncertain that they just don't want to have kids right now because some prices raise by 20% per year and everything, and they don't know if they can have children and raise them well. And that's the reason why they don't want that. So that should be the thing that the government is working on, that the people do not fear for the future instead of banning the child-free propaganda, quote unquote. And the other one that's even worse is a news from Japan. In Japan, the Conservative Party leader Naoki Hiyakuta suggested that women should not be allowed to marry after the age of 25, and when they are 30 and don't have kids, then their uterus should be removed. Unnecessary surgery. And what is this? It really left me speechless because how can you think about removing the organs of a person for no reason? The intention is to motivate them to have kids earlier, and therefore also the access to university education from the age of 18 should be restricted for women. That's what he said. He got a big backlash for that and a lot of critiques, but still he made the statement, and he's not a random dude that posted this stuff on X or whatever. He's the leader of the Conservative Party, and that really frightens me as well, that there are people out there, men out there, who think they can talk about women like this, and that are people who also are in power. So what we are facing here is definitely a war on women, and we don't only see this in Russia and Japan. We, of course, see that in Afghanistan, and what happens there seems to be so far away from us, but in reality, I have to say it isn't that far away from us. If I look at a country like Japan, that is not a quote-unquote third world country, but a wealthy country. And I remember that when I visited Japan and met Inger from the band The Number Zero, she comes from Norway and she now lives in Japan since many, many years. And she also said that Japan has this problem that people don't get kids anymore. They have many couples with double income, no kids. And some people asked her what could be done to motivate women to have babies. Again, only looking at the woman. And she said that women want to have a career. And when you have a baby in Japan, you stop working and you are only there for the child after that. And she said if there would be childcare and everything, if the woman would have the possibility to go back to work after giving birth and live their former life as much as that's possible with a kid, that would motivate women to have kids again instead of having to give up their life. The 2 news that I found bizarre but also very scary, because there are people who see women as birth machines. One thing that the Japanese politician also said is that they want women to focus on birthing babies. And that's something that I really don't like. We had this topic in 2 episodes before. We talked with Marnie, with a guitar player, about her sterilization and that it was very difficult for her and for her choice of living child-free. And Kiki and I also had this episode about motherhood and child-freeness. And yeah, we have a lot of opinion there if you want to know more about that.
All over the world, there are movements wanting to strip women of our rights, and it's very scary. And this is how maybe we can end up in a little bit of a positive note. On the note of where we stream and what we stream, what we listen to. The Rock streaming platform is finally in testing mode. I finally have my account. I am starting to listen to music on the Rock app. It's still very buggy, but we're giving them a chance, and it's a possibility of supporting the artists that we do want to support with a little bit more money, especially metal bands. Listen also to our episode about the Rock app that we had in the very beginning of the year. It's taken this whole year to finally be released, but we're getting there. Thank you so much for listening until here. The links and show notes to the articles and podcast episodes that we have mentioned are in the description. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to the Bleeding Metal podcast. And also on YouTube, we have new video interviews coming out more and more as well. And we need to get to the 1,000 subscribers on YouTube so that we can also maybe stream those interviews live for you all to see out there. Thank you so much, you two. It has been very nice to rant a little bit with you today.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.